Guys, what's going on? Welcome to Serial at Midnight. My name is Heath, and in this video, we're going to talk about two new movie releases that honestly I would have loved to have supported in the movie theater. If these had come out in my theater, if the global circumstances were different, I would have been there day one for both of these movies. But as it stands, that's not an option. So I want to thank Lionsgate for making sure that I was able to see these movies digitally so that I could talk to you about them in an informed fashion. We're talking about Guns Akimbo, and we're talking about We Summon the Darkness. So let's start with Guns Akimbo. This is a New Zealand movie that stars Daniel Radcliffe with an American accent, which I gotta be honest, it took me a while to adjust to Daniel Radcliffe with an American accent. As I can't recall if I've seen him do that before. And Samara Weaving, who is, she was in my favorite movie of 2019. If you saw our best of 2019 list, Ready or Not was my #1 movie of the entire year. Of everything I saw, oh, she's just the best. I think that she's one of our new Scream Queens, but I think that she's bigger than that. She'll go on to have, she's bound for greatness. So Guns Akimbo is this New Zealand movie where we're kind of living in it doesn't necessarily seem like the future, but it's this world where people fight to the death in open public, right? And the viewing public, like the television audience, the streaming audience, watches these things happen in real time. So it feels a little bit like a satire, but more on that later on. But it also feels like an homage to video games. Very much so. I'd say video games are the primary influence of this movie, but this is a movie that has seen a lot of other movies. We're going to talk about that too. So Daniel Radcliffe, I'm going to keep the spoilers very minimal. This is not intended to spoil anything, but I have to be able to talk about it. So Daniel Radcliffe is he's a keyboard warrior who like burns people on the internet in chat rooms and in comments and videos and stuff like that. Really just an ugly, it's what we see all the time, on Twitter, all the hatred and stuff. He's just openly hostile to people. And then there's a series of events that lead to some consequences being enforced upon that. And he wakes up with guns bolted into his hands. And someone is coming to kill him. Samara Weaving is coming to kill him. And that's where it kind of picks up and goes. And it's this whole very stylized, hyper-violent... again, I want to say it's a satire, but I'm not sure that it is. Because sometimes it seems very funny. Being a New Zealand movie, listen, it's got Rhys Darby, who we all know from Jumanji. That guy, he's in Flight of the Conchords, doing the thing that Rhys Darby does. But it's just funny. But then other times it seems very, very, very angry. And I have a hard time reconciling those two things at the same time. This is also a movie, as I said, this is a movie that's seen a whole lot of other movies. And I think your enjoyment of Guns Akimbo is going to hinge on how much you know those other movies and how much you've seen them and how much. There's really nothing new in Guns Akimbo. It's kind of just a lot of stuff put together into this one package. Listen, it's at least 50% inspired by Crank, that movie with Jason Statham. There's a Crank 2, right? But I'm thinking of the first one where he has a limited amount of time to get to this person who's done this thing to him and serve revenge. And it's all in real time. And it's all so fast. At least 50% Crank. I also see, I see Death Race 2000 here. I see Mad Max in here. The bad guys, straight out of a Mad Max movie. I actually have a list here. I was writing down the movies that Wanted. The DC Comics turned the movie with McAvoy and Angelina Jolie. Wanted. There's a lot of Wanted in this movie as well, I feel like. Even John Wick, I think this is heavily influenced by John Wick because of the hyper violent action scenes. You walk into a room, it's just like that sort of a thing. There's a lot of that, so you can see the influences. I even wrote down that I see from Ralph Breaks the Internet the level that they go to in that movie where it's Slaughter Race. There's a lot of Slaughter Race in here, but I don't know. It just has all of these, Dredd, or the Judge Dredd movie, Dredd. There's a lot of Dredd. Dredd felt like a video game movie too, to the point that there's levels. You got to get to the top level to the ultimate boss. But maybe these things are just kind of built into the structure since it is so influenced by video games. Listen, it's very quick moving. It's very bright. It's very colorful. It's action packed. There's no reason to be bored with this movie. But at the end of the day, I just don't know what to do with it. I don't know where to place it because it feels like a satire sometimes. And as a satire of our current culture that's so obsessed with violence and being terrible to people, it feels like the movie is kind of judging Daniel Radcliffe. But then it does other things that I'm like, well, maybe it's not. I don't know. So if this movie is sincere, and, I don't like to talk about behind the scenes things. I don't like to talk about the real world influence, but there was some controversy around this movie with the director on social media, essentially doing something kind of similar to what the character in the movie does. So if it is a satire, that would hit really close to home. I just don't know, but I don't know. It was fine for what it is. I do not love this movie, but it was certainly, you can think of a lot of worse ways to pass your time. It really feels like the movie equivalent of Mountain Dew Code Red. It's the movie version of Mountain Dew Code Red. It's quick, it's fast, it's colorful, it's going to give you that adrenaline rush. There's not much there underneath, it's not a meal, it's not a steak, it's Mountain Dew Code Red. So if that's your cup of tea, you're probably going to really enjoy Guns Akimbo. Just gauging by what other people have said about the movie, it seems to have really resonated with some people who like that sort of a thing. It seems like a good movie for like an all-night video game session. You take a break and watch some Guns Akimbo, pound that Mountain Dew, and then you you get back to your game. But next I want to talk about We Summon the Darkness. And I'm going to tell you up front, I loved this movie. I absolutely loved this movie. But everyone's reaction to this movie is going to be different because it feels so like it's a personal connection for me. And I don't know if you don't have that personal connection. I don't know if it's just going to be another horror movie for you. I mean, here's another thing. I can't talk about this movie without spoiling the movie, so I'm basically going to have to just leave most of this on the shelf. But I can tell you that it's set in the 80s. It's a horror movie. It's a comedy as well. It's got a lot of comedy elements, but it's a horror movie that is set in the latter half of the 80s, and it takes place during the Satanic Panic. And I, having lived through the Satanic Panic, and who am still fairly somewhat angry about some of the stuff that happened during the Satanic Panic, some of the overprotection. We actually have a video about this here on the channel. There's a video that I made. It's about a book called Turmoil in the Toy Box, which is a book that basically found satanic through lines in every bit of G.I. Joe, Care Bears, He-Man, Barbie, Star Wars, you name it. It was telling our parents that these things are going to drag your child to Satan. So here's a movie version of that, and it is a commentary on the 80s Satanic Panic. And I can really say no more about the plot because there are some twists. I feel like I'm skiing. There's some twists and some turns here that you have to experience for yourself. But I think that how you respond to this is going to be how old you are, what you grew up like. And for me, it's a deeply personal movie, and I feel it feels like vindication for me. And I know I heard the director interviewed on a podcast, and he was basically saying, this is my commentary. Like, he was also hurt by the overprotection and felt very betrayed by a certain group of people, and he's getting back at him in this movie. It's got Alexandra Daddario, I believe is how you say her name. Johnny Knoxville in a serious role. He's not taking any crotch shots or jumping anything on a moped or anything like that. It's a very serious role for Johnny Knoxville. I would like to see him do more things like this. He used to do a lot of serious roles. And I feel like I want to see more of this. So, I can't really say anything else to you about this. It's set against it's what happens during and after the events of a heavy metal concert in, I think it's 1988 in Indiana. So Midwest, every town. It is. Yeah, I can't say anything else. Listen, I love this movie. I absolutely adore it. As it stands now, it's sitting near the top of my list for 2020 movies. Of course, it's still a long year. There's still a lot to come out, but I have such a personal connection with this movie. As a horror movie, it's very good. As another thing that I like about it, it's an independent movie. It feels very small. You can tell that it's made out of love, but well crafted. Independent movies are not always well crafted. Sometimes they feel very rough around the edges. This is for what it is, it's a very, very good movie with great performances, great horror scenes. I think we're going to be talking about this one for a long time. Those who have seen it know what I'm talking about, but I think that the footprint on this is going to resonate with a lot of people. That silent group of people out there who still have that chip on their shoulder from the 80s. My generation, there's a lot of us with a chip about some of the stuff that happened, and this is directly for us. So I loved it. We Summoned the Darkness. I can't recommend it enough. As I'm recording this video, the Blu-ray is not out yet. It's coming out in July, I want to say. But the digital is rolling right now. So Serial at Midnight recommends that. Guns Akimbo I recommend to a certain audience. If that sounds cool to you, check that out. We Summon the Darkness I recommend far and wide to anybody that's going to listen. So thanks again to Lionsgate. Thanks to you guys for listening to these. It's so nice to talk about some new movies for a change. We spend so much time in the retro, and I miss the movie theater. But we have the next best thing. We have those new movies here in the comfort of our own home. So thanks again to Lionsgate. Thanks to you guys. Take care. And until next time, I will catch you later.